Can you use pastels on toned papers? Recently, I was asked if you could create realistic art with pastels on toned papers. Because of this, I decided to give it a try and see if my expectations were accurate. So in this video, I'm going to walk you through how I created this seascape using pastels on toned brown paper and giving you my opinion for working this way. I'm Abigail and I make art videos designed to help you grow as an artist. Now onto this demonstration. I started this project by loosely mapping in the water with light blue. Then after that, I added in some shadows with dark blue. I am applying the pastel with horizontal pencil strokes to replicate the subtle waves. I want the sun reflected in the water, so I avoided covering in the middle of the water with blue. One thing to point out about working on this paper that I noticed first is that at only 80 pounds, this paper does not have much tooth. This means that although I can use pastels on this paper, I am limited to only a few layers before the pastels will stop sticking to the paper. Now this is not because the paper itself is not high quality, but rather that it's not made for this specific medium. Pastels fill in the tooth far more quickly than other mediums like colored pencils. To prove this further, here is a speed drawing that I did in colored pencils on this exact paper. Feel free to watch it to see how many more layers I was able to do with that medium. Now back to the project. I added yellow and brown to the sand and white to the seafoam. This time I used a dabbing motion to add these in, thereby creating the illusion of texture. Many times in art, you need to take a step back and treat it like an illusion created by lots of different strokes, groupings, patterns, and so on. When you try to draw every detail, you just make more work for yourself, and will sometimes make the drawing seem too busy. Next, I went on to map out the mountain range. For this, I started with the same size soft tool, SOFFT, I used for the water. But when I started to refine the edges, I switched to this smaller tool. It's always good to experiment, since although you may know a way to get a certain result, there's always the chance you will find an easier way to get the exact same result. For the reflections in the water, I just duplicated the shapes of the mountains, but like before, I used horizontal strokes to create the look of waves. Now for the sky, I started by mapping out where I wanted the sun. For this, I didn't draw in the sun, rather I drew around it, giving the impression of where the sun is. This technique is called negative drawing. I then added in a base of blue to the sky and white to the clouds. I then add another layer of white to the highlights in the clouds. Just because the clouds are white does not mean that they have no depth. We just need to look closer for the highlights and shadows within them. I also added in some shadows to the rest of the sky with dark blue. Now as I got closer to the end of this drawing, I did have to deal with the pastel not sticking. The good news is that I had the brush and pencil texture fixative, which allowed me to re-establish the tooth of the paper enough to finish. So what are my final thoughts on creating realistic art with pastels on toned paper? First of all, it's really fun for just creating something quick and loose. I think it will work well for sketches or simple landscapes like the one I just did. However, it was difficult to get the detail and contrast anywhere close to what I wanted because of the lack of tooth. So because of this, I would not personally recommend using pastels on toned paper for realism. However, feel free to give it a try and let me know what your thoughts are on working this way in the comments. Anyway guys, thank you for watching, and until next time, God bless.